Scalping on the North American continent has been practiced for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows that it dates back to the Archaic period, around 2500 BC. One of the most chilling discoveries was made at Crow Creek, South Dakota. Over 500 skeletons were found in a mass grave, most showing clear evidence of scalping. The victims had been killed around 1350 AD. Scalping was not just a brutal act of war, it was a deeply spiritual ritual. Many tribes believed that a person's spirit resided in their hair. To take an enemy's scalp was to take their soul, their strength, their essence. So sacred was this ritual that at times the victim was left alive. Having lost their power, they were no longer seen as a threat. Scalping women and children was not considered dishonorable. On the contrary, it proved that the warrior had penetrated deep into enemy territory. It was a sign of unmatched courage. If victims survived, some were treated as outcasts, like ghosts. Others, however, were seen as spiritual beings. The Mohawk men famously grew their hair long, only on the top of the head, and shaved the sides. This was no fashion statement. It was a challenge, a visual dare to the enemy. Come and try to take it. Nearly every young warrior was taught his death song from childhood. They were prepared for what would happen if captured. In the center of many villages stood a torture post, where the community, even women and children, would gather to witness the torment of captured enemies. Victims were often burned alive, scalped while conscious, or subjected to unspeakable pain. Yet, to suffer without a scream, and to sing one's death song through it all, was seen as the highest form of courage, even by the captors. In rare cases, a warrior who showed such bravery might be released, or even welcomed into the tribe. But most met a gruesome end. Native tribes weren't the only ones who practiced scalping. Colonial governments, Dutch, Spanish, and English, all offered bounties for native scalps. To them, the scalp had no spiritual meaning. It was simply proof of death, easy to carry and to count. Some bounty hunters murdered innocent Mexicans. Their scalps looked similar enough to pass. Today, we have many photos of people who survived this brutal ritual, but many others didn't. Scalp wounds often became infected, and in some cases, the exposed skull bone would rot away, slowly revealing the brain. One of the most famous survivors was Robert McGee. At just 13 years old, Robert was traveling west along the Santa Fe Trail with his family and other settlers. One sunny morning, a band of Sioux warriors led by Chief Little Turtle appeared. Within moments, they charged the wagons. A brutal massacre followed. Robert was shot and taken before the chief. Another bullet was fired into his body. Then, the boy was pinned to the ground with arrows. Still alive, he was scalped as he lay helpless on the prairie. After looting the wagons, the warriors rode away, leaving him for dead. But he wasn't. Cavalry from a nearby fort discovered the horrific scene and found Robert, barely alive. Another boy also survived briefly but died shortly after. Robert, however, made a full recovery. This photo, taken in 1880, shows McGee as a grown man, bearing the scars of his childhood ordeal. Another remarkable story took place near Bastrop, Texas, in 1833. Josiah Wilbarger and 4 other men were riding near the frontier town when they were ambushed by Comanches. 2 were chased down and killed. 2 others escaped on horseback. Josiah, struck by an arrow, fell to the ground. A warrior leapt off his horse and scalped him alive. Then they left him where he fell. Covered in blood and dirt, Josiah drifted in and out of consciousness. In a vision, he saw his sister, assuring him he would survive. The next morning, the wife of local settler Reuben Hornsby insisted they search for Josiah. She'd had a dream he was still alive. When the men returned to the scene, they found him, unconscious but breathing. He was taken to town and nursed back to health. Later, he learned that the sister who had appeared in his vision had died the very day of the attack. Bastrop remained a dangerous place for decades. Right in the middle of town, people could be kidnapped or killed. Another dramatic case happened in 1867 near Lexington, Nebraska. Cheyenne warriors, Porcupine, Turkey Leg, and Red Wolf had just finished a raid and were escaping north. They reached the Union Pacific Railroad and decided to sabotage it. They tied a railroad beam across the tracks and lit a fire nearby. As night fell, 2 railway workers, Patrick Handerhan and William Thompson, rode out on a handcar to investigate a telegraph failure. They saw the fire and let the handcar coast forward. It slammed into the obstruction, and they were thrown violently to the tracks. The warriors opened fire. Handerhan was shot and killed. Thompson, wounded, played dead, lying still as a warrior stepped over him. He felt his head being pulled back, and then his scalp torn from his skull. He didn't move. Later, Thompson retrieved his own scalp and staggered toward the train. He survived. Doctors tried to reattach the scalp in Omaha, but the operation failed. Today, that scalp is preserved in a public library. Our final story takes place in 1827 in what is now southwestern Wisconsin. At the time, the Ho-Chunk tribe was seeing a massive influx of white settlers, despite a recent treaty banning encroachment on their land. Around 2,000 settlers had moved in illegally, hunting and mining led. Tensions were high. When 2 innocent Ho-Chunk warriors were wrongfully executed for a murder they didn't commit, the tribe erupted. On June 28th, a warrior named Red Bird, along with 2 others, attacked a farm near Prairie du Chien. 2 men, Registe Gagné and Solomon Lipcap, were killed and scalped. A 2-year-old girl, Louisa Gagné, was also scalped. When rescuers found the bodies, Louisa was wrapped in a blanket and brought back to her mother. To everyone's shock, she was still alive. Louisa survived her wound and grew into a strong woman. She went on to have 13 children. For the rest of her life, she wore a cap to cover the terrible scar left by Redbird. To modern eyes, scalping may seem barbaric, but judging the past by today's standards is a dangerous mistake. Scalping was not merely savagery, it was part of a deeply spiritual and complex cultural framework. Denying this truth because of our discomfort only harms our understanding of Native history. The past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, must be preserved in full. Only by facing it honestly can we truly honor it.